Welcome back to the NExT Appraisal Tool modules. In this module, we'll be discussing question 8. Is the sampling process clearly described and include inclusion and exclusion criteria? To critically appraise the article, it is important to understand differences between the study sample and the larger population that researcher intends to apply results. The ability to apply or generalize results is called external validity. To maximize external validity, a sampling plan is needed that creates a study sample that is representative of the larger population of interest, the target population. To increase the representativeness of a study sample, the investigator would choose random selection of this population. A complete list of the target population might not exist, or researchers may not have access to this entire population. The accessible population refers to those individuals that the researcher has access to for recruitment. The study sample is the individuals that meet the study inclusion and exclusion criteria and are willing to participate. All authors should state the study inclusion and exclusion criteria. For intervention studies that need strong internal validity, the inclusion and exclusion criteria are likely to be narrow to create a more homogeneous sample. This is a sampling strategy that controls for confounding factors or those alternative explanations for study results. This will improve the ability to detect a change in the outcome due to the intervention rather than a sample characteristic or a confounding factor. When appraising an article, consider study participants versus non-participants. Look for the author to report a participation rate. What percent of those recruited agreed to participate? Individuals who are more motivated to participate might differ from those who do not participate. Any differences might affect the results. Lower participation rates also affect generalizability of the results to the larger population. Probability or random sampling refers to the process where each potential subject has an equal chance of being included in the sample. The benefit of random sampling is it increases the chances of creating a sample that represents the larger population. In this illustration, when random sampling is used, as we move from the target to the accessible population, we see subjects of all colors are represented at each sampling stage. In contrast, when non-probability sampling is used, as you move from the target population to the accessible population, there are no longer gray people. And as you move from the accessible population to the study population, the study sample no longer has blue people. This illustrates that random sampling supports generalizability of the study results to the larger population. We list common types of sampling to introduce the terminology. You can always search for the definitions of each if you want to learn more when you appraise your articles. 4 common probability sampling methods are listed. Simple random is when the researcher has a complete list of potential subjects and randomly selects from this list. Stratified sampling is when the researcher separates the population into groups based upon one or more characteristics and then samples within each of these groups. Cluster sampling is done when the researcher divides the population into naturally occurring groups or clusters rather than sampling individuals. Systematic sampling is used when the researcher has a list and selects a specific interval to use until the sample size that they want to achieve is completed. 4 common non-probability sampling methods include convenience, which refers to sampling from those who are already available. Quota refers to when the researcher predetermines the proportion of individuals with a specific characteristic. Purposive refers to a conscious effort to include subjects with specific characteristics, and network or snowballing takes advantage of social networks with individuals having similar characteristics knowing one another. And the researcher would ask the subjects or potential subjects to help identify others who might be available. Sampling error affects the accuracy of study results. It's the difference between a sample statistic and the estimated value of the population. With random error, we expect values or characteristics of individuals to vary across study participants. Some have higher values while others have lower values. With systematic error, characteristics of the individuals sampled consistently vary in one direction. Sample values that are consistently higher may overestimate the population value, and when consistently lower, sample values may underestimate the population value. This is an example of a flow diagram you will see in randomized clinical trials showing the progress of subjects through study enrollment, allocation to the intervention or control group, and the final sample size included in the data analysis. These authors very clearly describe the status of subjects at each phase to help you understand potential sources of bias or reasons why some subjects were not included in the final data analysis. It's important to check the article for a retention rate. High retention rate is good. When subjects drop out or are lost to follow-up, this can be a source of error when those not completing the study differ from those completing the study. The amount of potential error increases when the retention rate is substantially lower in one group than the other. Authors should discuss differences between subjects who were and were not retained in the study. Let's review some excerpts from an article to answer our appraisal question. Is the sampling process clearly described and includes inclusion and exclusion criteria? Your appraisal response should be an honest reflection of how the article helped you understand their larger population of interest, who they recruited, who they enrolled, and ultimately, does it help you understand to whom the results may be applied? You may wish to take a moment to pause the presentation, read over the passage to find the answer. When you're ready, restart the video to see how I answered. For this article, the answer is yes. When reading the full text of the article, the introduction describes their larger population. They then go on to describe their accessible population, which is the 3 hospital units. They include very specific inclusion and exclusion criteria. They mention the enrollment rate. They mention the retention rate. All of this supports our ability to generalize these study findings to a similar population. Congratulations! You successfully completed this module. You may return to the main menu or continue to other appraisal modules in the NExT EBP course.